Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another surprise solo pod with I kind of like the camera angle here. I don't know why it looks like this, though. I feel like something fell. Why is my monitor? All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another surprise solo pod. I am your host, Mario Busto. I am not joined by my co-host, Zachary Newton, but nonetheless, welcome back to another episode of Story Archives, where I'm going to be covering a show that I have been hotly anticipating for a couple of years now. And the name of that show is Alice in Borderlands. Season 3. Wasn't expecting it to come out in September. That one took me by surprise. I had done my whole content calendar, and I didn't realize that was coming out this year. And I was pleasantly surprised, and I was shocked that Season 3 was pretty good. Now, I may say some things that contradict myself. I'm sure I will. I am positive I will. But nonetheless, there was a lot of good in this season. It is my understanding, as someone who has not read the manga, that the actual manga ended with the ending of Season 2, which I thought was one of the greatest cliffhanger endings of all time. And you know me, I'm not a big cliffhanger guy. But I love these shows, man. I don't know what it is with me. Maybe we should talk about this. I don't know what it says about me, but I do like these shows with like the games to the death. I don't know what it is. Hunger Games, Squid Games, Alice in Borderland. I will say this. Season 3 was kind of, in some sense, if we zoom out on the story, was kind of pointless. I felt like it could have been pointful, but I felt like it could have had landed the plane a little bit, and it's so tough, right? I've always said this. If you listen to Story Archives, I've said this over the years with these sci-fi shows that have the mysterious monster type thing. The question in Alice in Borderland has always been like, who's in charge of this weird world where people have to do these games to the death? Are these gods of this world? Are these different entities? Are these aliens? Or what the hell is it? Is it all in their heads? What is it? And we got somewhat of an answer, but not really an answer, at the end of this season, which we will get to. Bear with me. I am just a Cuban American who's going to be butchering all of these Japanese names as we go through, but I have the official Alice in Borderland fandom wiki opened, and I'm going to do my best to get everybody's names right. Now, I do need to go and find a specific individual who appears at the end. Remember, this is a series review. I'm going to be spoiling the living daylights out of everything in this series and in this episode, okay? I love talking about shows like this over anything else, really. It's harder to talk about shows that are more grounded than it is about shows that leave the imagination to wander and wonder of certain things. Now, bear with me, because this is a solo pod, and I have no help on this. And I am largely going off the dome, so all of this is not prepared. I'm not reading a teleprompter. I am speaking. What is that? Stream of consciousness? That's what I'm doing. And I want to know the actor who played the Watchman, because I believe he's one of the most famous Japanese actors. Yes, he is. It's Ken Watanabe. And I knew his name, and I've seen him in a bunch of things. And he was in Inception, Tokyo Vice. He's in Batman Begins. I mean, this is the guy. So when I heard his voice, I was like, wait a minute. Anyways, but I don't want to fast forward to that yet. We're going to do the whole season. There's a difficulty when there is the big monster that nobody knows, that you're going to be able to land the plane successfully and give everybody an answer that makes sense, right? Something that is satisfying to the fan, satisfying to the normie, that you're not going to roll your eyes at and be like, wow, 3 seasons just to find out that, they were dead the whole time. No, none of that. I'm glad that there's like this evil, amoral, supernatural force at the end. It is very dark and bleak if you think about it. If you really sit there and think about it. I don't feel like we have a proper resolution, because how do you return to your life How do you return to your life and live it normally, knowing that when you die, that's what it is? That would probably drive everybody in that show insane. Yeah, I didn't pour enough coffee in there. Too much milk, too much sugar. Or not that much sugar, but too much milk. Anyways, so I wasn't quite satisfied with that. I was intrigued when Ken Watanabe's character, who he calls as the Watchman, was there. It did feel like they wasted the potential of this season, and it felt a little bit lame that season 3, the whole thing was about Banda, like this weird, evil, mega maniacal guy who loves this twisted Death Games world, right? And he's obviously like the guy who the Watchman wanted like to take over his spot or something, or to train him up to be a Watchman, right? And he says, I misjudged him. Okay. That's what we're doing. The whole season was just, he wanted Arisu in there. He's kind of like this weird, like Banda's a weird character. And at first I thought, okay, maybe maybe he's the Joker. Maybe he is the Joker. Because Watchmen says that the Joker's just a card, but I actually don't buy that. I don't buy that. We know there's going to be spin-off series based on the end. I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't happy about that this had the exact ending. Cover your ears if you haven't watched Squid Game. It had the exact same ending as Squid Game, where we went to LA and now we know we're going to get American Alice in Borderland. And I'm going to be honest with you. I love America. I think we do make the best shows in the world per capita, okay? But we're not going to do a good job with this. I don't think we will, personally. I don't think we will. I hope I'm proven wrong. I don't have an appetite for it. I don't know where they're going to go with this. Seems like a Netflix money grab to me. Could be wrong. Netflix, hop on the podcast. We'll discuss it. You can tell me why in secret. I'll sign an NDA, maybe. But it just feels like inauthentic to the story. Now, naturally, one can assume that if these death games are happening in Japan, that they're happening everywhere in the world, right? Same with Squid Game. The moment you see the high rollers rock into Squid Game in their stupid masks or their animal masks, you can just kind of assume like, oh, these games must happen everywhere. They organize these globally, which if David Fincher's going to do the American Squid Game, might be cinema. But nonetheless, I was a little bit sad about it because it made season 3 feel cheap. That the whole thing was just about getting Arisu to stay in the world. Now, I did like the concept that this round of the Alice in Borderland games was very much a competition of the previous champions, right? Everyone in this season had been inside of the Borderland games before. I was hoping, because this does come from an anime. I was hoping for more of an anime ending. And what I mean by that is this. Maybe I should do this in the end, but we'll do it now. I'm going to try to fix the ending of Alice in Borderland Season 3. I do give the show a 7 out of 10. Simply not landing the plane in the way I would have preferred them to is the reason why I do that. Maybe 7.5. I really enjoyed it, guys. Really, really enjoyed it. But let me try from my bedroom to reconstruct the ending in a way that I think would have led to a fire season 4 conclusion. Okay? Here we go. Usagi gets shot by Ryuji. Okay? He kills her. Ends up killing Arisu's baby. He stays behind in that room. Panda shows up, who's not just a random weird guy who just has an obsession with Arisu. Maybe he's like in love with him or something. He says, Arisu. Or maybe the Watchman shows up after Banda gets shot, right? Because Banda broke some rules, right? But when Arisu does that little game of cards with the Watchman, he says, Arisu, I'll give you one offer. Because this is the land between life and death, right? So who's to say that they can't bring people back from the dead from this place? They tell Arisu, if you play one more game, you can bring back everyone who's died from the games you've played or whatever the prize is. You can bring Usagi back to life. And then you have season 4 where they give them an option where you can pick a team for your team. And you get back Chisaya. You get back Anne. You get back these people who died. Oh, Anne didn't die, so you wouldn't want to drag her into it. But you bring back the people who died. You bring back the naked guy. You bring back the iconic characters, his 2 friends. And I know it would be unrealistic, but everything's unrealistic about this show, so why not? Chisaya's the best character, right? He's not dead. But he was the best character in the show. And that's why they should have ended the series with his little therapy session with Arisu. He's the best character. He makes me want to rewatch the series. And so season 4 would have been a sort of a literal Champions League of the Alice in Borderland games. And then if you want to do the spin-offs after that, fine. But end Arisu's story completely. Instead now, I don't think Arisu's story is done because the Watchmen alludes to a massive catastrophic event that's going to occur, right? Which means you're going to get Alice in Borderland US, Alice in Borderland UK, Alice in Borderland Spain, Alice in Borderland, I don't know where else. Okay? India, I don't know. All these different things. None of which I really want. But I can understand it. What if it's like a Champions League where the team from Japan goes up against the team from the US, goes up against the team from the UK? That would be kind of fire. I don't think also that we've ever had a show. Damn, I'm giving some free alpha out there because this would be a fire idea. I don't think we've ever had a show with multiple characters, okay? I think Invasion is the only show that's ever done it that's on Apple TV and somewhat. Where you'd have language in Japanese, language in English, language in Spanish, and then you would just have all these various shows within one show. It would be like the multicultural creme de la creme. That would be fire. And if they had enough gunpowder and could get, A-list directing talent behind it, get the best director from the US, the best director from the UK, the best director from South America, and go crazy on a season 4, 5, 6, whatever. Anyways, besides that, I was shocked how good the rest of the season was. Besides the not landing the plane in the way I thought would have been best, they still can make up for that in a season 4, possibly. We got Chisaya back, which means that I think we'll see him in another game, possibly. It does beg the question. I'm assuming he survived, right? Unless there's a possibility that if you die in that world, you could come back in the real world, right? But they surely brought him back for some purpose. Because I don't think the chapter's closed yet. So, hope it's not. I think this show is better than Squid Game. There were moments with that character who, the karate girl. What's her name? What the hell is her name? The karate girl who fought the tiger. You guys know what I'm talking about, like season 1. It was that particular bit was the most ridiculous thing. If they could have axed that, but that was pure anime, right? So they it was probably fan service in some way. But yeah, besides that, really solid. Made sense to me that Usagi went back because she was drugged. Okay. I know everyone's probably rolling their eyes. And I was too. Not about Usagi, but the fact that Ryuji survived the games in a wheelchair, and then they want us to believe that he survived multiple games in a wheelchair. It's not a little, it's very hard to believe. He should have been chopped in half in the Beat Saber game. I think even Ryuji would admit that, and he would have been if Usagi didn't help him. The train leap, my cousin took personal issue with the train leap, the one that he goes through the Olympic rings. I also would need to hear the science behind that. Is it true that if two objects are moving at the same speed, that you could just jump across to the neighboring object and go through the door? Or if you jump out, would you be moving at a slower speed than the train and then it would zoom past you and then you would just eat crap and die? I don't know. The best games in the season. My favorite game was the zombie game. Let's get that straight. Ray, who he meets in that game, ends up becoming probably the character who steals the show in the series. Ryuji did come in hot, but then he becomes this sort of one-note character who doesn't make a lot of sense to me in some ways, right? Like, he's devastated that he killed a colleague over his obsession with death, right? Then Arisu sacrifices himself and asks him to bring Usagi back to the world. You think he's kind of like gotten past the whole gun plot, right? But even after all of that, he decides he's going to try to drag Usagi down to the vortex. So, also really laughable that they're all just treading water in this, the most chaotic vortex of water I've ever seen. It's pretty much like trying to tread water in a tsunami. And the guy who's paralyzed from the waist down is able to do that while holding somebody, by the way. I once tried to save somebody while they were drowning, and I almost got drowned in the process. So that felt like one of those things where somebody just dropped something super dark. But that is to make the example of, could you imagine if I was paralyzed from the waist down trying to do that? So imagine that. And then Usagi's just like, I'm not going to lie, I would look at my wife sideways. I would look at her sideways. I would say, like, if I saved her from death, and I came into this world of death to come save her from these death games, and she's screaming for another man like that when he goes into the vortex, I think Usagi fell in love with Ryuji a little bit. Big no-no. Big explaining to do when we get back home, if you ask me. If I was Arisu, probably would have been looking at Yuna and Rei. I'm not going to lie. I would have had to give it a long, hard look. Aside from Usagi being pregnant, that is. Which was also identical to the Squid Games thing. But I would like to know which came first, Squid Game or Alice in Borderland, because I believe Alice in Borderland came first. Alice in Borderland came first. First season premiering on Netflix in December 20, while Squid Game's first season was released in September 2021. So, man, Squid Game really got away with that. But Squid Game kept it grounded more in reality. It's not a supernatural force, which makes it easier to spin it off. Whereas Alice in Borderlands almost reminds me of like the Greek gods in some way. Like that this is like a twisted version of, well, the gods are pretty like a twisted version. If you look at the Greek mythology and some of the stories there, that's kind of how I feel like Alice in Borderlands is going to be. And I was very disappointed that the Joker was not a real person. Because like I said, the season 2 ending was just terrific. That music was crazy. So favorite games. Zombie game was fantastic. The whole Ray plot, I thought that was great. I also thought the Arrows one was interesting, albeit a bit unbelievable, right? I thought the gas canister game in the train was very good. The kick the can was unbelievable that most of their team made it. It wasn't my favorite game, but once again, like to craft these games is difficult. I also thought the future game was good, but I thought the zombie game was the best. And that's typically how it is with these shows. Like the better games are in the earlier episodes. And that's the case with Squid Game too. Like when Squid Game has the glass bridge, that one's sick. The tug of war was great. Even the one with the carousel that stops and they got to run in the room, I thought that was good. All these various ones. It's funny that Alice in Borderland was able to put together 3 good seasons, whereas Squid Game, the last season, was not good. And I'm not saying that. That's just my opinion, bro. Like it just is what it is. It wasn't good. Whereas you think that they should have been able to do better, considering it was grounded in reality. Alice in Borderland has a way, way, way tougher challenge of telling that story in a way that doesn't lose its audience. So, other things to talk about. Let me pull up the character key again. Where we at? How did you guys feel about that there's going to be a bigger catastrophe that occurs than the one that took place in Shinjuku? That there's going to be... Or Shibuya, not Shinjuku. I found that to be very interesting. It just tells me that they're going to keep cranking these out. I just wonder when we're going to get another chapter of the Japanese story. because that's the one I'm interested in. I don't want like a American version of this, but we're gonna get it regardless. And I wonder if those two guys at the end are our main character. And then the big cliffhanger, which I almost forgot, that the waitress had the name tag Alice. So does Alice exist? Are there multiple characters aside from the Watchman? The Watchman seems like he was a former contender, but he also seems to have the power to bring down, those lasers that come down. I think these are like aliens, like a super race that are just using humans, or like some sort of gods. That's kind of my theory on it. I don't think that will ever be a satisfying ending here unless Arisu is able to conquer them and like end these games for good. I don't know how he would do that, but that would be the interesting part. It makes me really want to rewatch the series, I will tell you that. So I don't know what that says about this whole series, but it seems like a very rewatchable one. Although I feel like Alice in Borderland really, it strikes the balance between absurdity and actual heartfelt drama pretty well. Like, think about how tough it is, guys, to go from crazy death game to touching heartfelt music. Usagi's pregnant. That's pretty tough to do from a storytelling perspective. So hats off to that guy. I looked him up. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but the director and the whole team involved, I thought, did a terrific job. I don't know why they destroyed the whole world of the flood after, though, because they won everybody won the game, right? And then they were pretty much, if Arisu didn't step in, they all would have been killed. Also, not a lot of closure of the world that they went back to. How did they all end up with the happy ending? I was laughing half the time because Tetsu, in Tetsu's futures, like, they were all like bad. Same as the older woman. She was getting beat down by her husband like in 8 out of the 10 stories. I was half expecting Ray to be the Joker at one point. I'm really disappointed they didn't actually do a Joker reveal. Whereas, like, season 2, you had the King, the Queen, the Jack, the Ace, like all of those. I thought that was a really cool that you had to collect all of the cards. I thought that was a really interesting, sort of facet to the series. Overall rating, I think I said 7 out of 10 earlier in this episode. Series as a whole, I got to give Alice in Borderland absolutely 8 to 8.5. Like, I really enjoyed it. It's like that type of entertainment that you binge watch in a day or two. I watched it probably within 3 days, all of them. Could have watched them all probably in one day if I wanted to. I will say some of the games dragged on a bit. The Future game I thought was a little bit too anticlimactic, in my opinion. I like the concept of the doors and having to go to different rooms. It almost reminded me of the first game that Arisu ever has to play. The room that has the that you die in, right? That he's with his friends and everything. I got to go back and watch the season 1. Maybe I'll start that up again. They're just kind of hard to watch while you multitask, but because I've watched it already, it probably won't be as difficult to do. But let me know what you guys thought of the series as well. It was a really pleasant, man, what am I saying? It was really entertaining to watch, but pleasant, maybe not pleasant because it is death games, but it was fun to watch. What can I say? One shouldn't second guess. Anyway, so there's a lot of things coming out to end the year. We got Stranger Things coming out. I want to start that show Last Frontier on Apple TV. There's also a Ken Burns documentary dropping about the American Revolution that I am really, really excited for. Don't think we'll cover that. That seems a bit out above my pay grade. To talk about that, I could maybe talk about it from a layman's perspective, or as a fanboy perspective. There's more shows that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, guys, coming out. We got the announcement that Drops of God Season 2 is going to come out in January, I believe. We have Night of the Seven Kingdoms coming out in January, so just stay tuned. We got a lot of stuff. We're doing Slow Horses at the moment. Me and Zach got some stuff planned that's going to be some more like entertainment type content. And that's all I got. I hope you guys enjoyed these solo episodes. Go check out my solo pod on Task on HBO. That one also just wrapped up, and I also just finished that. And I also recorded that at the same day. I just changed this shirt, so you guys would think it was at different times. But Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit like on this video, sub to the channel, help out small creators, help us thrive as we create more entertaining content. The more subs we got, the more time we can spend on it. And if the shows are entertaining now, imagine what we could do with more, you know? So anyways, we want to just kind of amp it up. So anyways, also give a follow to my own personal channel as well. I'm going to do a collab posting experiment and see how that goes with building out some other content. So anyways, all right, y'all. Love you guys. Have a good one. We will talk soon. And take care.